You'd surely think there was an easy answer to this question, right? An exact number of stocks that investors like you or me would need to have in our portfolios, which means that we'll all make loads of money. Out of the tens of thousands of publicly traded companies in the world, there has to be a number of them which we should have, right? At least somewhere between owning just a single stock and thousands of them. Well, this question's been asked countless times by investors over the years, and plenty of people have studied the subject and done all of the research for you to get the answer. I've pulled together all of the research for you in this video, so I'll take you through what the academics say, but we'll also look at examples from the real world too, from people like Warren Buffett, Bill Ackman and Peter Lynch. Between all of them, someone must have the definitive answer, right? Let's go and find out.
Know what you own. I'm amazed how many people own stocks. They would not be able to tell you why they own them.
Starting from the top, we know this question is one all about risk and reward. Generally, if we've got less stocks in our portfolio, we're looking at having more risk, whereas the more we own, the less risk we might face. Having only one company in our portfolio would mean that in the event that it went out of business or went bust, we'd lose everything and we'd have to start again. Whereas on the other hand, if we had, say, 10 companies, we reduce that kind of risk because 10 companies are a lot less likely to go out of business, at least at the same time. If we had perfect future vision and we knew what was going to happen in the stock market, all we would need to own would be one stock. We'd literally get all of our money and invest it into that one company. However, we don't know the future and there's no such thing as perfect vision, so we've got to diversify. We know that there's many things out of our control, as even the best stock pickers make plenty of mistakes. I mean, just look at some of the professionals out there who still lose small fortunes. Warren Buffett says
diversification is a protection against ignorance.
Don't take that the wrong way. He's not calling us stupid. We're all ignorant of plenty of things. Because so many things out there are out of our control in the business world. We know that we have to have a good number of stocks in our portfolio to counter the risks. So this leads us on to the big question. How many stocks do you actually need? As promised, let's look firstly at the research from the academics. There's a lot to cover. One of the most famous studies in this space is one from Evans and Archer from the 1970s. In their research, they looked at how risk should affect the number of stocks in your portfolio. In short, they broke risk down into two different kinds: systematic risk and unsystematic risk. Don't fall asleep just yet, it's really not that complicated. Basically, systematic risk was risks that affected the whole stock market. Consider it to be things out of our control for companies, whether that's war, global pandemics, interest rates and inflation. Then any risks that were specific to the business are unsystematic risks. Think about the risk of the business itself going bust because they run out of money, make poor decisions, don't perform as well as they should, or a whole number of things. By crunching the numbers on these risks with all of their fancy formulas and all of their data, they produce a chart showing an inverted curve. On the x-axis that goes along the bottom, you've got the number of stocks, and on the y-axis that goes up, you have the amount of risk. Effectively, they say that once you hit around 15 stocks, adding more companies to your portfolio has actually very little effect on reducing risk, as you can see here, because the line is not as steep anymore. However, one huge thing to note here is that all of these portfolios that they designed were from a random grouping of stocks, and although that might have seemed an interesting way of building a portfolio, I mean, nobody in their right mind would think of choosing their stocks this way. Unless you had some kind of goldfish, I suppose.
No, the lights are on. Boom. Tigger's at the top. Boom. The fish is choosing. He's favoring the MO one. Ooh, what'll it be? Ooh, what's he gonna... Oh my god.
Looking at some more data, Lawrence Fisher and James Lowry also performed some similar research. Their findings came to a very different conclusion when they looked at a selection of stocks from the New York Stock Exchange ranging from 1926 to 1965. In summary, from their data, they reckoned that you needed 32 stocks which were randomly selected to get 95% of the benefit from the full diversification of the market. After that point, adding in more stocks had much less effect and then would just lead to a more unnecessarily complicated portfolio, reducing any possible rewards. Interestingly enough, the academic world is still chewing over this problem, and a lot has changed since the 1960s and 70s when some of this original research has been done. Some academics don't think the way that the problem's been looked at is correct, and they say that to fully gain the benefits of a well-diversified portfolio, you actually need a lot more than 15 or even 32, because they don't measure risk in the correct way. For example, Sears and Price reckon that the number should be more than double what had been stated by Fisher and Lowry. By their measures, only 90% worth of diversification risk can actually be achieved by having a 60 stock portfolio. So if you want to achieve closer to 95%, then you're going to need to manage a lot more companies. Right, so that's all confusing, isn't it? Somewhere between 15 and 60, but those were all random portfolios and nobody picked stocks like that. Also, what about all of those stocks who perform amazingly well compared to a lot of the others who can't even beat the market? This just got a lot more complicated, so Let's move on to the real world. Let's start with the big man himself, every investor's favourite person to quote, Warren Buffett. Alongside Charlie Munger, they manage Berkshire Hathaway, which is a giant holding company that owns a lot of other companies, almost like a big portfolio in itself. Berkshire Hathaway has 44 current positions with a total value around $330 billion. You can see that the largest holding is by far Apple, and that most of the portfolio is concentrated in just a few positions, which is pretty interesting in itself. Apple leads the way with nearly half of the portfolio's entire position at 47%, followed by Bank of America, American Express, Coca-Cola, and Kraft Heinz. Top 20 positions make up 97.2%. You must be doing something right over there, because when you compare the performance of Berkshire Hathaway to the wider market, you're up over 6,000% compared to the S&P 500, which is only up around 3,400% when you go back to the 1980s. But what about some other successful money managers, because not everyone has so few holdings? On the other hand, another famous investor, Peter Lynch, who managed the Magellan Fund at Fidelity, which became at one point the largest mutual fund in the world, seemed to want to own a lot more companies. Lynch managed to take the fund from $18 million to $14 billion during his time from 1977 to 1990. He remains one of the most successful managers of all time, averaging nearly 30% a year for 20 years in returns. So, how many companies did he choose to invest in? Well, Peter Lynch is somewhat of an outlier, as he managed to take the fund to over 1,000 stock positions. I'm not really sure how he managed that number of companies, but either way, something was working. He owned everything that he deemed a good business, from lots of different sectors, everything from Ford Motors to Lowe's. If he was restricted to, say, 30 or 60 companies, there would have been no way we would have performed as well. Who knows? What about another investor who takes a different approach? Bill Ackman is another famous money manager who's had many years of outperformance with his fund, Pershing Square Holdings. This fund currently has only 6 companies and is very concentrated on one sector, consumer services. Companies like Hilton, Lowe's, and Chipotle make up the largest part of the fund, but as you'll see, every company in the portfolio is a significant play, with even the smallest position being Domino's with an 11% play. That's Bill's style that he's well known for, going for large concentrated risks that if they pay off big. Remember though that even though this is a great strategy that's got a big upside, anything in investing with a big upside can also carry big risks too. Just recently the fund had to sell off a brand new position that they took in the streaming company Netflix, costing them over $400 million in losses as the share price plunged after losing subscribers for the first time. It doesn't matter who you are, anyone can make mistakes, and there's always a lot outside of our control. Worth noting though, we're not professionals here, are we? We just want to make sure we can invest our money in the best way over the long term to hopefully have a decent nest egg that we can use to retire early and earn some financial freedom. At least that's my goal. So I don't think that after looking at these professional portfolios that they're necessarily good examples for most people. One huge thing we're missing, and something most of the academics miss out, is the creation of index funds. It's no surprise that data from the 1970s and onwards never really looked at building a portfolio of broad, low-cost index funds because they just weren't that popular and were still trying to gain some traction. For investors today, it's a complete no-brainer in my opinion and many others that there's no need to create a portfolio based around individual stock picking when you can just buy the entire market for a very low fee, and in the long term, you'll end up doing pretty well. There's so much data out there now showing us that using index funds, investing consistently, and sticking with it through the good times and bad will beat most professional money managers. Stock picking and building your portfolio is really difficult, especially if you want to beat the market. Maybe it was much easier in 2020 and 2021 when everything just went up, but now that we're in 2022 and things have gone in the wrong direction, we've all been reminded of how difficult this can be. And let's not forget that we've got more interesting things to worry about than spending all of our time trying to pick stocks. One other thing that we haven't really touched on yet is probably the most important factor in trying to build a stock portfolio, is that the majority of gains from the stock market actually come from such a small number of companies. Just think about it. The big companies of today who dominate the S&P 500 like Apple, Google and Microsoft weren't anywhere near the size they were just 20 years ago. Just like other companies like Tesla weren't even around, but now sit near the $1 trillion market cap and have risen in such a short period. I mean, would you have picked the right companies at the right time and then held on for such a long term? Just 25% of all of the companies on the market accounted for all of the gains that you see today. That means that 75% of companies over the long term had a net return to us of 0%. Thousands of companies who all tried their best to succeed but ended up doing absolutely nothing for us. When we look closer at the winners, it's just 6.1% of the winning stocks who outperform massively. And those companies end up being the ones who move the entire market in a positive direction. We really have to ask ourselves the serious question, could we pick those 6% of companies before they rocket up, or are we a lot more likely to pick the dud ones and end up losing out performing even worse than the market average? I'll leave that question for you to figure out, because the conclusion to this video seems to be that there's no perfect amount of stocks you need to have in your portfolio. Basically, it's up to you. We know that having just one is too risky and that having everything might seem a bit too much, but since the creation of index funds that allow us to own the whole market or most of it really cheaply and easily, we no longer have to worry about which stocks to pick, how to diversify, and which regions of the world we should hold. The question isn't really about how many stocks that are best for your portfolio, it's really a personal question of how much effort, time and risk you're willing to take as an investor. Knowing that even the smartest investors in the world with all of their resources still struggle to keep up with the overall returns of the stock market, isn't it best just to use index funds and spend more time enjoying your life and focusing on getting more money at work that you can actually invest in the first place, rather than trying to find the next Apple or Microsoft? And hey, nothing wrong with some stock picking on the side. That's what I like to do alongside my index funds. It keeps things exciting and interesting too. Otherwise, I'd probably just lose interest. So there you have it. The perfect number of stocks to have in your portfolio is pretty complicated, and more up to you than an exact number I can give you. Somewhere between 15 and 60 sounds fair, but in reality, this assumes that you've got all the time needed to manage it and forgets about all the other aspects of the real world that we also need to deal with. If you've enjoyed the video, please do me a massive favour and drop me a like. It really helps out small channels like mine. If you are interested in starting investing, you might like my Investing for Beginners guide here, which actually lets you know everything you could imagine to get yourself started today. Or if you aren't from the UK and you're already invested, why not follow along with one of my latest portfolios that I'm building with US growth stocks on a new platform called Lightyear. Then you can see how my own stock picks fare against some of the great investors that we've just spoken about. Anyway, until next time, subscribe for more videos like this, and as always, happy investing.